Well, here's something that I thought that I would never say on this channel again. This week I'm going to be taking a look at the Doctor Who Big Finish spin-off Class. Of course, that thing that aired in 2016 on BBC Three. However, I'm not going to be taking a look at the televised version. I'm going to be taking a look at Big Finish's relaunch of the series in the forms of Class Volumes 1 and Volume 2, newly released on the Big Finish website. It would be fair to say that Class was a rather unusual Doctor Who spin-off where we kind of all felt like it was getting axed before it even started, due to a fairly mixed reception from the majority of the fandom, due to it being a spin-off that not really many people wanted, and also due to the quality of the actual series itself. It got axed, I do believe, at the very start of 2017, meaning that we kind of had our only hope of seeing Class ever returning either in the form of books or in the form of Big Finish, and that is of course exactly what has happened, as Big Finish has took it under its wing, and now we have 6 brand new adventures over 2 volumes of Class box sets set within Series 1 of the television series. First off, and as always, in the description below, I will leave the link to go and buy this release from Big Finish website. It's currently out now, both releases. The physical CD is £20 and the download is £15. However, an unusual thing and a new thing that Big Finish are currently trial running is the physical edition of both Volume 1 and Volume 2 are in fact a limited pressing. So by needing to get the physical releases, you had to pre-order them in order to guarantee yourself an actual copy. However, from at the current time in filming, there is still physical copies available on the Big Finish website. So basically, due to the 21st century and the way technology moves on, people prefer to buy downloads over physical forms naturally these days, due to them being a little bit more cheaper. So yeah, if you want a physical edition, go to the Big Finish website soon, as it could be at risk at selling out. And you don't really want Volume 1 without Volume 2. You kind of need the whole box set if you're anything like me when it comes to these things. I must admit, the cover art is really nice, very bright and colourful, something of which that the Class promotional material for the TV show exactly wasn't. It was a little bit grim, much like the 12th Doctor era stuff, very dark, very dingy, and very unusual. And also, if you're interested by what I say throughout this review, there is also the trailer that you can listen to and download on the Big Finish website, as well as all the casting details. Also, some links to a few additional reviews on there as well, along with all the details for each single episode on these 2 releases. So this is, of course, 6 adventures split across 2 box sets. So 3 adventures in one, 3 adventures in the other, all written by different writers. The whole series is directed by Scott Handcock. The first episode is Gifted by Roy Gill. The second episode is Life Experiences, written by Jenny T. Colgan. Episode 3 is Tell Me You Love Me by Scott Handcock. And then for Volume 2, Episode 1 of Volume 2 is in fact called Everybody Loves Reagan by Tim Foley. Episode 2 of Volume 2 is Now You Know by Tim Lang, and episode 3 is In Remembrance by Guy Adams. And yeah, it is a rather unusual format because we have quite a big variety of writers for this box set, and some of the not so Big Finish regulars. The only one that is a strong regular for me at the minute, I do believe, is Guy Adams and Scott Handcock, and all the others are kind of newcomers to Big Finish almost, but have had a few outings in Big Finish audio dramas in the past. So yeah, this box set, or these box sets even, are rather unusual because they're going to have a stigma around them before people even listen to them. However, I wanted to give these audio dramas a chance because I'm aware that generally I have more trust in Big Finish writers as opposed to Patrick Ness, who did of course write all 6 or so episodes of Series 1 that aired on BBC Three. This review is going to be a little bit of a brief overview of all 6 stories spread across the 2 releases, as opposed to 2 separate reviews on each, partly because I would rather only do 1 review for the Class box sets as opposed to 2 separate ones, and also I think that is going to be enough for 1 review to kind of give my overall impression of the box set. So taking a look at the cast for this series, we have once again the regulars from the actual televised show returning. So starting off, we have Catherine Kelly as Miss Quill, who is somebody who of course was in Coronation Street quite a while ago, and I do believe that she's gone on to do other things as well. She is only in 2 episodes from what I can recall from these 2 box sets. The first one, or her first appearance, is Tell Me You Love Me by Scott Handcock, and then she also appears in Remembrance at the series finale on Volume 2 as well. Miss Quill is in an unusual situation where I feel that she's one of the only main reoccurring characters throughout the actual televised series to get a decent amount of character development for me to actually care about her character and understand her actual purpose in the TV show was quite pivotal to the actual scripts as well, because she is the guardian of Greg Austin's character, because she has the Arn in her or whatever. She is an exiled person from her own planet, a bit like the Doctor. And yeah, I kind of feel like Big Finish didn't really need to do much with her for this box set, because her Series 1 already overseen her character and did really all that they could do with her. She had a purpose, and that was really it. So yeah, she was good throughout this box set. No particular big standout moments, however. Moving on to the more main younger protagonists, now we have Greg Austin as Charlie Smith, of course the other alien in this series, who is of course gay as well. He is a very talented actor, I do believe. I think that Greg Austin is somebody of which who is very underplayed in class, to say the least. They could have used him a lot better, and I feel like Big Finish have gave him a lot more human character traits. I feel like they've made him a little bit more relatable. I feel like some of his life issues are a bit more relatable as well, and generally he is a lot more interesting from what we've seen in the actual series. I must admit though, however, this box set does continue the theme of why on earth do I like this guy, because I find that when he always refers to his planet and kind of his background, just a little bit up himself throughout the majority of the televised series, and that theme does also continue throughout this one. However, I still think that Greg Austin makes him a little bit more of a likeable character throughout these releases, so he is fairly well written. Next character to take a look at, we do have Fadi Asaid as Ram Singh, somebody who I refer to as the main lad type guy of the series. He's the guy that thinks he's trendy, thinks he's cool. He's, of course, the guy that plays football in the actual show itself, and once again, a similar situation to Greg Austin's character, where they've definitely made him a little bit more likeable. There are several moments throughout this whole box set where I generally like what he comes out with. He's almost a stereotypical teenager to some extent, and he feels a little bit more real as well. I think that they've definitely gave him more development as opposed to just that guy who thinks he's cool, he's sporty. He in fact has a few issues behind that as well. So yeah, I think that definitely in the first volume, in the first story of the first box set, where he is in fact alongside April, called Gifted, I think that he's very good in that. It does in fact develop the relationship that they have, and I do like him generally a lot more in this box set, and same for life experiences as well. So yeah, Fadi Asaid is possibly one of the standout characters for me. However, moving out to the more standout character, in fact my number one for these whole two box sets, is in fact Sophie Hopkins as April McLean, and she is a character that I think has definitely really nicely benefited from the Big Finisher treatment. I think she is a character that I really do like. I think that she is someone who is powerful, but also has a lot of life struggles in there as well. Of course, in the actual TV show, we did learn that her mother is of course disabled. She is in a wheelchair. She's pretty much housebound, and she's pretty much a carer for her. However, in these box sets, it doesn't reference that whatsoever. This series is more about her sort of social struggles, and once again, the first episode of the series called Gifted really nicely expands on her relationship with Ram, and it actually feels a lot more real, because in the series it was definitely lacking. Why on earth are these two together? They feel completely different. They feel like they have nothing in common either, and it's just a little bit unusual. It kind of felt like we were just meant to go along with it, and yeah, I didn't particularly care about the relationship. Big Finish has definitely expanded on that a lot more. However, the main moment for me that really made me think that her character was really good throughout these box sets is in Volume 2, episode called Everybody Loves Reagan, written by Tim Foley, and that episode really nicely expands on her character and basically sees her entire friend group essentially turn against her, and it is a very big struggling story for her, and I think that Sophie Hopkins plays it excellently. Next up we have Vivian Apora as Tanya. She's of course the rather intelligent nerd throughout the series, once again following a stereotyping actual TV stuff that was done. Once again, a similar thing for this box set. The episode called Life Experiences in Volume 1, it definitely contributes to her character a lot more, and her relationship that she has with Ram. There's a nice relationship between those. It's very friendly and very fun, and also the same for Volume 2 as well, in the second episode called Now You Know in Volume 2, written by Tim Lang, and that episode definitely once again makes her seem a lot more intelligent but likeable at the same time, and definitely contributes to the series, and actually shows how she struggles to fit in once more due to her being sort of essentially because of the colour of her skin. So, you know, it's nice to see that Big Finish are actually delving into more sort of social problems that we have today. So that is very good, and I'll come to those social problems a little bit more In fact, right now, as I go on to Jordan Renzo's character as Matthias, who is, of course, somebody, I do believe, from Poland in the actual series. He is the partner of Greg Austin's character, of course, Charlie, so once again, he's gay, and he fits in really badly with society, essentially, due to the way that people judge him. Of course, there's homophobia in that as well, and once again, this box set really nicely experiments with that. It's not too cliche, it's in fact very well handled. It actually feels like society today, living in a college or being in school, having people judge each other for who they are and sort of the unique identities that they have. And I find that his character, Matthias, is always somebody that is essentially reoccurring in the actual series. However, for some reason, he is not a main character. On the class Wikipedia page, they have all of the main characters, and then Matthias is just reoccurring, and I found that very unusual. And one of the main actual pieces in this series for me that really makes his character stand out is in the first volume, Tell Me You Love Me by Scott Hancock. Once again, a really nice character piece with him and Charlie. And then also in the second box set as well, Now You Know by Tim Lang, his character really nicely develops with Anya. The relationship that they have is quite unusual and different, and something that I didn't expect to in fact work in the way that they did. So I actually like more of the reoccurring characters in this series more than I did in the actual TV show, partly because of the way that they were written in the TV show really hindered me actually having any interest in them and also even liking them. However, Charlie is still somebody who I just don't really, he doesn't sit well with me. He just is, I'm not bothered by him, which it's a shame, but that said, at the same time, I still respect what they've done with him in this release. Now I'm going to be moving on to the actual narratives of all 6 stories over the 2 volumes in this series. I'm basically going to give a brief overview, not as in-depth as usual, just giving you a few brief ideas. So the first episode on volume 1 is Gifted by Roy Gill, and this is basically a twist on a grim fairy tale, and it's a very nice relationship piece for Ram and April. To be quite honest, I would have happily had a whole volume dedicated to Ram and April, especially in this story. Their relationship develops a lot more. It highlights the struggles that they are having because, of course, April wants to go away to, I think it's Sweden or something like that, to study and further her education, and Ram has much different sort of aspirations for future life. And I think that their relationship is a struggle, but at the same time, it feels very real. It doesn't feel like it's criticising sort of teen emotions or anything like that, unlike how the actual TV show did. And I think that generally the idea of having this character who's called Mysterious Mab, she's essentially a witch, and you're also introduced to a student that is new to Cull Hill as well. And there's this idea of playing with people's weaknesses. So for example, you've got April's social awkwardness, and then you've got Ram and the idea that he's got a fake leg that is of course being placed there by the Doctor after the events of the first episode, I think it was, where he lost his leg due to the Shadow Kin. And there's this whole idea of success stories and driving them to succeed, and it is a very interesting idea, once again playing on the actual sort of personal weaknesses of students, something of which that is very real, much like society today as well. So that's very good, and I think that Roy Gill does a really good job of also padding out that relationship, as I say. And it is an entertaining story, a nice way to start the box set, a little bit gruesome as well to some extent, when we have thorns, sort of a thorn prison and somebody embedded in like this weird house. It's very odd, but also at the same time, I feel like if you didn't like the characters in class, you will not get along with this story, simply because they are the main part of this episode, and kind of if you didn't like them in the first place, then it's sort of like you're not helping yourself by listening to an episode completely dedicated to them. But it's still a nice listen if you like those characters in the series. As I said, it made me like them a bit more. The next episode is Life Experience, written by Jenny T. Colgan, and this is an episode that I think I can refer to as kind of a Netflix original series kind of thing. It reminds me of Stranger Things, and the way that we have this alien in that series that is very unusual and sort of harbours this entity kind of thing. It's not like what we perceive as a normal alien, it kind of goes beyond our understanding, and this episode sees a lab where Ram and Tanya have gone off to do work experience, and basically this alien in this lab escapes, and the whole of the situation is them trying to survive while this alien is out loose in the lab essentially. And introduced this high authority woman in this story who, to be honest, is a really unlikable character. She feels like she can just put people as disposable in order to get this alien back into safe confinement. And yeah, it is a rather unusual story and did build on the relationship once again that Ram has with his friends, such as Tanya. And once again was a fun listen. As I say, if you like modern sci-fi, such as things like Stranger Things, I feel like you may like this episode. And Jenny T. Colgan once again does a really nice sort of character piece based on Ram and Tanya, and I feel like Tanya is now just a little bit more than the stereotypical nerd, which is quite good. And then the final episode of the first volume is a story called Tell Me You Love Me by Scott Handcock, and this is possibly the highlight of the set for me in narrative-wise, because I feel like the first episode with Ram and Tanya is more engaging because I like the characters more. However, Tell Me You Love Me is an episode that is a character piece based on the relationship between Charlie and Matthias, and it is based after school when everybody has gone home and there is this alien that has once again came through the void in time, or whatever it was in class, the rip in time. I don't know, that for some reason is lurking around Coal Hill. And it's once again this entity that is essentially a parasite that hooks onto people's minds and makes them constantly speak all the time in order for them to blurt out absolutely everything and essentially empty their minds to try and make them a host for the parasite that's in their head. And it hops from person to person by using certain phrases that are repeated throughout English language. So in this episode it is I love you, I think it was, but it's something like that, just 3 words. And it is a very interesting story because I feel like this episode is based around the relationship that Charlie and Matthias have and the struggles that they have, the fact that they don't fit in, also the obvious homophobia problems in there as well. And I feel like Scott Handcock has made this story incredibly personal. Once again, he makes the characters actually feel real, and I gain more respect for Charlie in this episode as well. I feel like he is a lot more humane as opposed to his more sort of alien sort of persona that is, I'm the prince of whatever and I'm more powerful and you will obey me. And then we also have Quill in this story as well, which is nice to see her have a little bit of a limelight to sort of see how she's going to solve the situation. And it turns out that she doesn't really have much of a care of who dies or anything like that, as long as it isn't the prince, because her job is to, of course, protect him. But yeah, it's a very good piece, very powerful as well, for only essentially having 3 members in the cast that have major roles. So yeah, Scott Handcock did a very good job on that 3-hander story. And generally overall, that is it for volume 1. It is quite nice, but once again, similar thing to the actual TV show. If you really, really hated Class on actual TV, then probably you won't like this because it is exactly the same characters. But if you did like Class, then I think that this is just essentially an expansion of adventures that are a lot more experimental than what we had in the series itself. It gives a new perspective of what other writers would have done that unfortunately we didn't have in the actual TV show, and I think that that could be responsible, in fact, for why the show went into such of a downfall, because it was all written by Patrick Ness, and therefore it was all his ideas, and I feel like some fresh ideas in there might have done it a bit more justice and made it a bit less boring. Now moving on to volume 2, we have Everybody Loves Reagan. Now this episode is written by Tim Foley, and I feel like I've listened to one of his stories recently as a part of a box set, and he is a writer that I'm really quickly coming to respect, because I feel like this story is in fact my favourite of the entire series. I think absolutely excellent job, and it's also the reason why I really like April McLean in this series as well. It's the episode where you see all of April's friends turn against her. She is quite obviously struggling because they're introduced to this new student at Coal Hill called Reagan, who turns out, surprise surprise, I think it will be no spoiler to say, is in fact an alien, and she is once again a little bit of a similar character to the one at the end of volume 1, where you have this parasite. She is a mind parasite that hooks onto people's emotions and issues, and she is essentially a counsellor that feeds off other people's grief. And it is a very interesting concept, and one of which that kept me hooked all the way throughout. I think that this could have very easily been a Doctor Who story with a very singular episode between the Doctor and his companion or something like that, if they're going through like character troubles at the same time. But Effie Hopkins carries it so well. You really actually see that she's very stressed by the situation. The fact that the listener also has more knowledge than the characters in the story, because you can physically see Ram and Tanya actually turning against April because they believe that Reagan has been in their lives literally for absolutely years. They went to nursery together. Ram used to be in a relationship with Reagan apparently, so she is changing history in order to get these people to like her, and it is a very unusual story, and I do really like it for what it does. Very experimental, and I feel like, if this episode was in the actual TV show, probably class would have got a bit more respect. I don't exactly think it's original. I'm pretty sure that I've experienced other TV shows in the past that have done a similar thing to this. I think that Sarah Jane Adventures may have even done one where I think that it was relating to Clyde, where everybody started to hate Clyde or something like that, or everybody started to hate one of the main protagonists and turn against them, or something like that. Engaging. So yeah, I like it. It's definitely more engaging than the televised stuff. But second episode of Volume 2 is Now You Know, written by Tim Lang, and is once again a rather interesting story based around the paranormal, and is a rather nice Doctor Who reference story as well, because of course within the actual TV show we had the connection of the Doctor coming in with episode 1 and basically saying, these are your main protagonists, go and like them, and that was really it. Then he left in the TARDIS, and his cameo was kind of pretty pointless, to be honest, because it made the other main protagonists in the show feel incredibly weak. However, in this episode, one of the first things is it references Doctor Who. There is this great idea of a boy that goes missing because he has been bullied, and Tanya and Matthias basically have this Scooby-Doo mission of trying to figure out what happened to him, and there is this great moment where Tanya hacks the Coal Hill Academy sort of system, seeing everybody that has gone missing or kind of gone to another school in the local area, and there's this moment where Tanya says, even in 1963, 2 teachers and a student went missing. Of course referring to An Unearthly Child, and that is the kind of reference that I like to Doctor Who. It refers to the fact that it's in the same universe, and it acknowledges that, but it doesn't go any further. If you know what they're going on about, then you understand it, but if you don't, then it just kind of leaves a big question mark in your head of what they actually mean by that. So it's kind of the link to Doctor Who that I like, more so than what was in the TV show of having, let's throw the Doctor in there in order to get more of kind of a response from people. So yeah, I think that Now You Know is a very odd one. Probably one of the weaker episodes of Volume 2, if not the weakest of Volume 2, but I still respect it because I like the idea of bringing in bullying, because this episode is very based around social attitudes, and we have Matthias in this story, as I say, who is gay and also from, I think, Poland, so he's, I think, a migrant or something like that. So naturally people don't like him because he's both of those things. He's judged and he's shouted at, and people cause fights with him and everything. There is even a moment where he pretty much gets beat up in a homophobic attack. And then there's also Tanya as well, who isn't liked by people simply probably because of the colour of her skin, and also because she is very academically headed. She is very motivated by the fact of learning. She's the equivalent of a nerd, and people don't like her for that reason either. And I think that Tim Lang does a really good job of making this feel like a teenage drama without being patronising, which is a theme that this whole series has. It has some nice adult moments in there, not just adding in the odd swear word here and there and going, hey look, we're being adult and trendy, and kind of bringing in sort of teenage emotions and things like that. This series actually has the problems of racism, homophobia, singling out people in society and bullying them, and it feels real, and I think that the writers got a really good sort of taste of what life is actually like for the younger listener. And yet I feel like teenagers could relate to this. This is far more than what Class was trying to be on TV, of basically a middle-aged man trying to be hip and trendy by writing things that stuff that he believed teenagers in fact related to, when in reality it was just cringy and really cliche and not really very sort of realistic to real life. But I feel like this has proper understanding in it of actual real life in education in England is like. So yeah, I really respect the writers for that. And yeah, it makes these stories feel a bit stronger, but still not exactly completely stand out. Final episode of Volume 2 is In Remembrance, written by Guy Adams, and features the only Doctor Who related thing in this series, and that is of course a return of Sophie Aldred as Ace, and of course a Dalek as well from Remembrance of the Daleks. Now, when I originally heard what this story was going to be doing, it is essentially hooking on a chapter to Remembrance of the Daleks, one of my favourite Doctor Who stories of all time. I just didn't really like the idea of something being tacked onto one of my stories that I adore, because I feel like it kind of could taint it, or what if it's bad and it kind of affects the actual story. This story, it nicely keeps a distance from the Doctor Who episode. Once again, you see Charlie going back in time to the actual event of Shoreditch in Remembrance of the Daleks, so you have Coal Hill under attack, and you basically get a Dalek from an army squadron that has came through this time crack to once again try and find out why the Daleks were defeated and how they can change the outcome of reality in order to in fact succeed. And Dalek army procedure or something like that. And then you also have a rather nice sort of conflict between Miss Quill and Ace as well. This is of course set after Ace gets left on Earth after the events of Gallifrey Time War Volume 1, where she basically goes to Earth and she needs to live a normal human life, and you see her struggling with the real aspects of life, of basically forgetting that she was in the Time War, and she's a little bit on edge about that, but at the same time she remembers that there was this Dalek fraction when she was with the Doctor that was trying to kind of change reality after a remembrance of the Daleks, and she kind of goes back to see what exactly was going on and see if she can solve it for herself with some Nitro 9. It's kind of like an older character hopping back into her younger shoes, which I do quite like. But what I also like is people say that this story is solely putting Sophie Aldred and a Dalek in there in order to captivate the classic series audience. And I must admit, it probably is. It's probably there to generate interest. But the big difference between putting Ace and a Dalek in this box set and the difference between putting the 12th Doctor in Class is that you physically need to pay to listen to and experience this story. You did not need to pay for Class. You only needed to pay your television license that even then wasn't directed at Class itself. It was sort of directed at the whole of the BBC. So therefore you don't need to pay to experience the actual television show. Therefore there was absolutely no need to put in the Doctor whatsoever. It was just an attention-seeking device. But in this box set it feels more understandable and it actually works as well. It's a nice idea. I think the guy does a rather good job in this story as well. And also I like the fact that we're catching up with a later version of Ace, something that we did very much with Leela's character as well in the War Doctor series. And who knows, maybe this will be the start of a future version of Ace in other box sets in the future. That would be quite nice. But I think that the interesting thing for this story is, once again, the fact that it's got a Dalek in doesn't really bother me, even though it's my favourite design. I still don't think that this is my favourite episode of this release, regardless of the Doctor Who references in it. Still like Everybody Loves Reagan, even though it contains absolutely no Doctor Who material whatsoever. But overall, for Doctor Who Class Volumes 1 and Volumes 2, I feel like these two box sets are an interesting inclusion into the Class series. Of course, they couldn't have done anything too big, because these are essentially chapters from within Series 1. It kind of happens between episodes here and there, meaning that nothing big could have happened that really changed these sort of characters in the actual series. Otherwise, it would have been reflected in the actual televised stuff itself, and they would have referenced it here and there, which is, of course, something that can't happen. But I feel like this box set definitely does a very good job of fixing this series. I feel like all of the writers that have came on board have respected teenage drama and haven't made it too cringy or cliche, which is very easily done by lots of different pieces of media. And I think that Scott Hancock has done a very good job of directing as well. He's definitely got a very nice modern style. And also, for technical details, just giving credit to Blair Mowat, I do believe, Blair Mowat, who did the compositions of all the music throughout this series. Really good, once again, consistent to actual Class and the televised stuff, and it feels a lot more 21st century than some Doctor Who stories feel to do in the new series. So yeah, a similar compliment to the actual televised stuff there. But I think that generally, if you like Class, you will probably like these two box sets if you have experience in the audio drama format. However, if you really detest Class on TV, you will not like these box sets, as it is fairly similar, just a little bit more experimental than TV stuff. And if you're just somebody who thinks Class is a bit meh, then also it may not be worth spending your money on these, because there is other Big Finish stuff that you can buy that is guaranteed to be a lot higher quality than this. I just hope that this is kind of grab the attention of the Class audience, and who knows, maybe in the future we will get essentially Class Series 2, where they do the Weeping Angel stuff and whatever they were planning on to do in Series 2, and maybe even fix Class, because then they have the full reins to do whatever they want. And let's face it, this is the only way that we're ever going to get more Class in the future. So for the actual fans of Class and the people who enjoyed it, I suppose this is a good thing, because it's never going to be coming back to TV. I think I will be incredibly shocked if it ever did. It's something that will not happen. So yeah, this is the future of Class from now on, and this is a nice shot at doing two box sets, but at the same time nothing complex or nothing really too stand out, but still a nice set of character pieces. So thank you for watching this review. If you have any questions about Class Volume 1 and Volume 2, then please leave them in the description below and I will reply to them at some point in the near future. And also check out some other reviews of these releases on the Big Finish website as well. No doubt there will be a few up there by now, along with a few additional review quotes. I guess that is it. I will see you all in more Doctor Who content in the near future, from Big Finish to product reviews and to so much more as well. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I shall see you all next time. Bye for now.